welcome here to a very special wake-up call with Dan Tortora, bringing you Tortora
and Alford
right here from the Great Lakes Honda City Studios. Great Lakes Honda City coming to you on 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard in Liverpool, New York. They're open for sales and service Monday through Saturday. You can get a sneak peek by going to GreatLakesHondaCity.com. Isaac and I are here with you in Tortora and Alford previewing Syracuse v. Clemson, the first true road game for the Syracuse Orange football team this season after going and facing off against Tennessee in part one of the doubleheader Aflac kickoff down at Mercedes-Benz Stadium run by Peach Bowl Inc. that oversees the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. And then after facing Tennessee, came home to face UConn and Colgate. So this is the first true road test for Syracuse and Clemson. They've been home, but they ain't played that well at home.
Not so far. Surprising they come into the season right now to 1-2. I think when we probably previewed the season, we was probably thinking more of maybe a 3-0 Clemson, maybe a 3-0 Syracuse.
Yeah,
that was our hopes. But Tennessee was a tough matchup coming out the gate. You really didn't know what we had. We know we got the talent and the skills, but again, you couldn't anticipate Syracuse having 2 wins and Clemson 1 at this point in the season.
No, and with a 1-2 record, Clemson has one more win than Notre Dame, but is unranked.
Right.
But Notre Dame, who has this many wins, is ranked. When could you be in the top 25 with a winning percentage of 0?
And it's crazy. Just think, we're talking Clemson. Last year, Clemson lose the first game. What, they come in at like 11? They lose one game and they drop to 25.
Yeah. They fell almost all the way out.
Exactly. So, must be nice to be Notre Dame, I guess. That's what it looks like,
Must be nice to be Penn State.
Yeah, that too.
People critiquing Syracuse saying, why you play Colgate? Well, Penn State played Villanova, stayed undefeated, above LSU, who beat Florida on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm. And the LSU team that beat Clemson.
Right.
So, So, I mean.
And South Florida's not ranked after playing only ranked teams, 3 of them going 2-1. So they got 2 more wins against ranked teams than Notre Dame, 2 more wins against ranked teams than Penn State, more wins against ranked teams than Ohio State.
And they lost against a ranked team, so give them a little bit of credit,
You know what people said? They lost by more to Miami than Notre Dame, so Notre Dame has a quality loss.
Oh, okay.
But you know what Notre Dame doesn't have? A quality win. Or a non-quality win.
That's right. Any win would do a little bit better than what they got.
I'm just saying. I think Quasimodo's got more wins ringing that bell.
But that's the real thing about rankings. I would say, college football don't get a preseason, so you don't get the chance to play and get a feel for your team before the season starts. Now, me personally, just give everybody a 4-week grace period and then come out with some rankings. And then if you think somebody needs to be somewhere, now we could kind of shake it out. If you played a soft schedule in your first 4, then that's your fault, you know? And now you can gauge everybody against the scale of who's played who and how they perform. But, it'll shake itself out, but it's just weird.
Penn State played a 3-game tournament in the Bahamas for their first 3 weeks.
Yeah, and you get to move up.
Yeah, they get to be up there. Here is my view of the Big Ten. Ohio State is finally playing good teams in non-conference and beating them.
Right.
Tier 1. Michigan's finally playing good teams in non-conference but not beating them. Tier 2.
Mm-hmm.
Penn State ain't playing nobody and they're undefeated. Way down Tier 3.
They didn't get the memo. They're like, hey, let's do the status quo.
Well, when you know that the Big Ten gets promoted for playing the Big Ten when most of them are unranked, why would you test yourself outside of conference when you know that getting wins over Rutgers and Maryland and Minnesota and Wisconsin and Michigan State, all these unranked teams, that you're going to get promoted for these unranked wins?
Right.
So why would you test yourself knowing that as long as you win in the Big Ten, which they should, because most of the teams are unranked every year, and don't even get me started about Indiana and Illinois.
Why not? Go ahead.
3-0 unranked versus 3-0 unranked. 2 top 20 matchups who played a whole lot of nothing.
They got to make it interesting. Now we got some ranked teams go against
you got a lot of Big Ten teams that haven't played a single ranked opponent. They did what they're supposed to do, which is what this is like if Syracuse had Colgate,
Buffalo,
and like Toledo.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know why I was gonna say Toledo too.
Really?
I was thinking Toledo. That's crazy.
And you know what? They'd be ranked 47th for that.
Well, be nowhere. Probably wouldn't even receive one vote. That's how bad it would be.
I'm just saying, if Notre Dame is 24 at 0-2, then if Syracuse beats Notre Dame, wherever Notre Dame is ranked at that point, Syracuse should take their spot.
Yeah, but then that's the other interesting stuff too. Notre Dame lost some good talent on our offense. You coming in with a first-year starter, so how can you give them the benefit of the doubt? Right. Unless they're winning. Now they're losing, so you can say, well, they're not as good as last year. So they don't get credit for what last year was, So that's the big difference. It's like, hey, you want to, it's Notre Dame, all right?
Yeah.
But you know what? You can't just give them credit on
Notre Dame out here trying to poison my drink.
What are you doing?
They're trying to get me. What you don't know is I got the antidote. The antidote's called play the game.
Get them a Shirley Temple, quick, hurry.
I'm just saying. Fran, where's my Shirley? I need it. But, no, I mean, these rankings are laughable because South Florida's 2-1 against the top 25 and knocked both of those teams out of the top 25. 25 Boise State, 13 Florida. They played a top 5 Miami, top 5, top 6 Miami, lost to them. By the way, they had like 2 hours of rain delay or lightning delay. So that's another factor. Now, if that was Notre Dame and Notre Dame lost to Miami, they would have been like, it was a lightning.
Right.
But when South Florida did it, they're like, had nothing to do with it. It would have happened no matter what. And so here's my thing. Like, Clemson barely beats Troy in Clemson. And then Troy gets blown out by Memphis. So what does that say about Memphis? Because Memphis is unranked. South Florida is unranked. South Carolina is unranked. You look at some of these teams that have like little to no respect right now, which is crazy to me. And when people have a conversation with me and they say, oh, you feel this way about the Big Ten, or you feel this way about this, I'm like, no, I don't. If the ACC played a bunch of unranked schedule stuff, didn't test themselves out of conference, I'd be saying the same thing.
Right.
If it was the Big 12, I'd be being like, hey, they play a whole lot of nobody. But the American challenges themselves so much. And when they lose, people are like, shut up and sit down. And when they win, people are like, well, that team had a bad day. But then when you look at like the ACC, a bunch of teams every year play Notre Dame. You look at Syracuse played Tennessee. Virginia Tech played South Carolina. Like, there's teams that are testing themselves within the ACC where the Big Ten knows they don't have to. And then people say, well, Dan, what about the SEC? The SEC is really, really good. Really good. And I'm going to critique the SEC too when they play these nonsense games. But, like, this week, you have, like, these big-time games going on. You have Auburn at Oklahoma.
Right.
Like, these are games that have implications down the road. Notre Dame's playing Purdue, and Auburn's playing Oklahoma. Oklahoma played Michigan. Michigan got beat. They're still in the top 25. So, it's my whole thing is what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And for Michigan to be ranked right now, they played a ranked team and lost, and then they beat unranked.
Right.
And then Penn State, I mean, literally, to be 2 in the nation, beating 3 unranked teams, one of them's an FCS, Division I AA. Like, you can't even play a certain number of those or else they won't count. Like, you can play, like, 1.
Right.
But you can't play a bunch of those teams or else those don't count as wins toward your bowl. So, I mean, you look at how these teams are scheduling and who they're playing, and how can people not see with an honest eye that the Big Ten and Notre Dame can do whatever the hell they want and they're going to be ranked?
Right. Well, here's the crazy thing about it. Like you said, South Carolina. South Carolina comes in a season with Lenora Sellers, big hype.
Yeah.
You know, they come out, they play Virginia Tech. I mean, that's on paper, that's not like saying they're playing, like you say, Villanova or anybody, you know. And they lose to a Vanderbilt team, another SEC school. Yeah, okay, we say Vanderbilt, but Clark Lee's doing a pretty good job with that program. Right. And they come back with a decent quarterback in Pavier. So
look what they did last year.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. They put people on notice last year, and it's like, okay,
they kept at least 2 teams out of the college football playoff.
Exactly, and then they lose one game, and they go from 11? I think they were like 11 or something, somewhere in the high upper. I don't think it was in the top 10, but they were like 11 or 13 or something. And then they go all the way out because they lost one game.
Right.
Conference game.
Right.
That don't make sense. You lose a conference game and you just get okay. You go from 11 to maybe 21, but 11 to out.
Right. So if Michigan loses on the road to Nebraska this week, they should be 67th.
Yeah, why not? You know, like you say, it's good for the goose.
Right. You know, and it's not something that I've had my whole life as a belief. It's I was paying attention, and you start to like see something, and then like a couple weeks later you see it again, and you see it again, and you start to write it down, and then I'm like, oh man, for the last 3 years, for the last 5 years, it's been like this. Oh man, during COVID, they didn't even play, and they're in the rankings at 0-0. They're moving up against teams who are playing when they're not playing. So I'm writing this stuff down, and I'm just tracking data.
Right.
So the only reason why I say what I say about the Big Ten is because it's true.
Right.
And about Notre Dame is because it's true. And about the SEC at times because it's true. The thing with the SEC, though, is the SEC didn't get Alabama in, but the Big Ten got Indiana in.
Right.
So would you rather have an Alabama team with 2 or 3 losses from the SEC, or Indiana, who's 11-0 against unranked teams and then got blown out by Ohio State? Like, anybody else in that spot. Like, if you told me Indiana had to play Clemson, like whoever was in the college football playoff, if Indiana played last year in the college football playoff, if they didn't play Notre Dame, if they played Clemson, if they played Georgia, if they played Tennessee, Ohio State, SMU, Boise State, I would have picked anybody but Indiana. Not with any disrespect to Indiana. It's just the American, what do they say? Well, you don't play any ranked teams, and, you know, but non-conference they do. And now you got Indiana again, all the way up these rankings in the top 20 for what? And Illinois is at 9?
Right.
And it's 3 unranked. And they're like, well, Dan, what do you expect? Like, what are we supposed to do for the first 4 weeks? You got to rank somebody. Well, some teams are playing ranked teams and some teams aren't.
Right.
How does South Florida beat a ranked team not in the polls, beat a ranked team, gets in the polls, loses to one of 3 top 25 ranked teams, and they're taken out of the poll?
Right. And that's why I said you can play whoever you want to play in that first 4 weeks. But if you play in conference games, that's your way a lot more into the minds of somebody that's want to set the rankings. They can say, okay, yeah, you came in the season where your schedule felt you was challenged in the early beginnings. Yeah. We're going to weigh that more heavily than if you just came out with the easy part of your schedule, then okay, so be it. Yeah, you're the back of the line, you know. And then it's almost like we were saying the Big Ten, they got teams ranked up until a certain point, and then when they play the powerhouses and they lose, it's like, all right, they got their win against the top 10 team. Now they lose and they down to 18 or 20.
You realize outside of Ohio State this year against, at the time, number 1 Texas, the only time that the Big Ten beats ranked teams in the regular season is when they play each other.
Right.
And those rankings are inflated.
Right. By the time you get to them, it's like week 10, 12.
Yeah.
And
like Penn State playing Oregon, it's 2 top 4 teams, but are they that good? Like Oregon blew out Oklahoma State,
right,
who's in the quote-unquote power conferences, the autonomy group. They're in the Big 12. So they blow out Oklahoma State 69-3. And they're ranked below Penn State, who blew out FCS Villanova.
Yeah.
So how's Oregon in the Big Ten not above Penn State?
Right.
Because they're still treated like a Pac team.
Right.
And it's just wild to me. Like, Oklahoma beats Michigan. Now Oklahoma's got another shot to go up against a team like Auburn. Oklahoma's behind Ohio State. They're behind Penn State. They're behind Miami. What's Oklahoma have to do?
Right.
You know, Texas loses their first week to Ohio State, and they go from 1 to 7. If Texas was in the Big Ten, they would have went from 1 to 4.
Well, it's just like you say, was Penn State on a bye week that LSU and Clemson played? Was that, and then LSU knocked Clemson down off a peg, but you should give them credit to go up higher.
Well, they
instead
should
of
have
moving
played,
up.
Yeah, they both played 3 games, but LSU should have jumped them because one's playing Villanova and one's playing Florida.
Right.
And they're like, well, Florida's unranked. And I'm like, well, Villanova can't even be ranked in the FBS because they're in the FCS. So how do you argue that beating Florida is not as good as, or is, how do you say that beating Florida as an opponent in the SEC is a lower quality win than beating someone who can't even be in your top 25?
Right.
And by the way, if Syracuse beat Tennessee and beat Colgate and beat UConn, they wouldn't be ranked right now.
Maybe 20 in the top 30, you know.
I feel like Syracuse has to get to like 8 wins with a week or 2 to go, and then they'll squeak them right in.
Right.
You know, there's certain teams they don't want to put in. And there's other teams that can't help themselves. Kansas State last year, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
People say you go after the Big Ten. Let's talk about the Big 12. Kansas State last year didn't lose 3 games. They lost 3 games to unranked teams. And every time they lost to an unranked team, they were ranked the next week.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, why are they ranked? Then they're 13th, they lose. They're 17th, they lose. They're 19th. And you're like, what the hell has to happen? Michigan had to lose 3 games to be out of the top 25.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've never in my life, 3 weeks into the season, seen a team with no wins in the top 25.
Yeah,
and so for Notre Dame to be sitting there above South Florida, above South Carolina, above Memphis, you're like, dude, what is happening right now?
It's bizarre, man. It's crazy.
You know, Tulane beats Duke. They beat the quarterback that they lost in the transfer portal, and they get no love for that.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at Darian Mensah, and he's one of the best quarterbacks that was in the portal, and they beat him. And they were like, yeah, well, it's Duke.
Yeah.
But when Duke was coming into the season, they were like, oh, man, Duke's got Mensah. So how do you go from respecting Duke for getting that quarterback to not respecting the team that had that quarterback that just went and beat him?
Right. Yeah. It just don't make sense.
You know, Tulane goes and beats Caleb Williams, the future number 1 overall pick in USC, and a barn burner in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic. I'm there. What does Tulane get for it? Nothing.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're American?
Yeah.
That's what they do.
So I mean, it's
but like we were saying though, if you a team and you earn the right to get into the playoffs, then you earn that right to get that loss in the playoffs, no matter what conference you come with. Right. You can't just pack the playoff with a bunch of conference teams from one conference or whatever. You know, this other team played what we were saying, Army or somebody played a good schedule, good record, and then they don't get the opportunity.
Best record they've ever had.
Right. They earned the right to lose a game in the playoffs.
And you want to know why Boise State made it last year? Because at the beginning of the season, narrative, in the beginning of the season, the narrative was that Boise State would be the only non-power to make it, and they kept the narrative.
Right.
Now, Ashton Genty's good, but why did they come in ranked in the top 25 this year without Ashton Genty?
Right.
You know what somebody said to me? I think the running back behind him is supposed to be good. Well, who the hell knows that? Genty was the guy that ran the show.
Mm-hmm.
Guy had like 9,000 yards last year. So what are we talking about? I mean, here's a crazy thing. Preseason, first rankings of the season before we played a game of football for the FBS in 2025-26. The top 10 ranked teams in both polls, and most of it was the same. There was a little discrepancy of like AP and the coaches putting this team at 5, this team at 7. But the top 10 had the same teams.
Mm-hmm.
Of the top 10 ranked teams going into the season, 8 out of the top 10 had a different quarterback. So how can you come into the season and rank 8 teams in the top 10 in the nation that are coming back with a new quarterback, and you rank them above Lenore Sellers? You rank them like above all these guys that have proven themselves, that have done something, and you say that 8 out of 10 of them, including the number 1 team in the country, Arch Manning, that he's going to be up there, and he's going to be number 1, and he's the best team in the country, and there's no way that anybody's going to beat Texas and da-da-da-da-da. Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at Ohio State. Ohio State has a new quarterback.
Right.
Texas has a new quarterback, even though he was a backup. I mean, for goodness sakes, when you looked back at the top 10, Notre Dame has a different quarterback. Miami has a different quarterback. So how can you know what teams are going to look like?
Right, and then some of those quarterbacks, they even have a lot of game experience. Yeah, Miami, you know, they got a good top quality quarterback out of the portal. But some of these guys, like you say, either they're starting over true freshmen or redshirt freshmen, or they got somebody out of the portal to come join them. But again, that's a lot of what ifs, and you don't know if they know that system just yet. Just like us, like I said, coming into game one with Tennessee, we got a talented quarterback. He didn't have a whole spring to be with the team like Kyle had the previous year, but he came in the fall, won the job, and okay, now it's still different. This is that was his second start for Angeli to come into the season. You say he had one with Notre Dame.
So he had one in a bowl game with Notre Dame, and and now he's had three with Syracuse.
So there's a lot of what ifs in this.
And that one that he had was 2 years before this year.
Right. So that's a lot of what ifs. Like you say, those 8 teams coming into the college this season, nobody knows how well they're going to perform. So,
right. And the argument against what I said is you have to put somebody in the top 10. So Dan, they have to guess some things, and I was like, okay, so put the teams in there that have proven something or have returning guys.
Right.
I'm okay with you putting Boise State in the top 25 if Genty was still on the team.
Right.
But not now. So it's just. And they're like, because basically what people are saying is, how can you go into the season and not have Ohio State, Penn State, Texas, Alabama ranked in the top 10? Mm. Because if they don't have the returning guy at certain positions, and let's face it, the most important position in football is the quarterback.
Right.
So if you don't have that, then, what do you expect? It's not fair. So then they're like, well, who do you put up there? Put the returning guys. Put South Carolina higher. Mm-hmm. Put Clemson higher with Cade Klubnik.
Right.
Because, and then, you know what? If you're wrong, you're wrong. But, Garrett Nussmeier with LSU, okay, he was one of the 2 that was ranked in the top 10.
Right.
So keep Garrett Nussmeier. He's doing his thing. The team's 3-0. But I'd rather them be wrong about Clemson than keep promoting this ridiculousness. And the other team was Penn State with Drew Aller, and Drew Aller did not have a good season. Right. Drew Aller in the college football playoff, he'll tell you in the SMU game in the first round that was the defense that saved him. Mm-hmm. So, there's a lot left on the table for Drew Aller. So really, besides Garrett Nussmeier in the top 10 returning to a team, Carson Beck's coming off an injury, and you're trying to figure out who the next man up is going to be. You got all this hype with Arch Manning, but people were saying that he was good before he's even playing as a starter. And now what's happened to the poor kid? Mm-hmm. The kid's winning games and apologizing to the fans that he's not doing enough.
Right.
Because the hype was so outrageous.
Yeah, the expectations were way, way too high for a guy that didn't even have that kind of experience yet. But you know what? Like you say, he's winning games, and through adversity, he's finding a way to win games. And, it's a learning curve for everybody, coming into a season. If
you lost to the reigning national champion by a touchdown.
Exactly.
What are you complaining about?
Exactly.
The game was a defensive game. It was 14-7.
And what they always say coming into a season, defense is always head of offenses.
Right.
Offenses, especially you got a new quarterback, you got to have chemistry with your receivers.
Right. And Ohio State did too.
Things. Yeah.
So it's look at Ohio. How do you look at Ohio State, Texas, and think that between the two of them, they're going to have 21 points? Mm-hmm. Vegas won that one.
Yeah.
You're going to knock Arch Manning when Will Howard's not on the other side running the offense anymore. He's moved on. He's a Pittsburgh Steeler now. So, it's just it's wild to me, the things that are put on. And when people say, well, then who do you rank in the preseason? You do your research. Right. You look at what happened last year. You look at the teams that did well. You look at who's returning for those teams, and you make a decision. Like Joey Aguilar, Tennessee was ranked 24th. Why? Mm-hmm. Because people didn't know what to expect. So if you don't know what to expect from Aguilar, then why do you have all these other teams ranked in the top 5 when you don't know what to expect from them?
Right. And they're a decent program, too. So they could have had the same argument as the other teams that were in the top.
Why was UCLA not ranked with Nico Iamaleava? He went to the college football playoff last year.
Right.
And he's on a new team, but he's been to the playoff. Mm-hmm. So it's just, when you break it down, people eventually have to admit that they have a bias, or they have to say, you're right, this is wrong, because we're giving factual statements and factual evidence. I'm not going to come to you and make an argument that has holes in it. I'm going to come to you and make an argument that makes sense.
Right.
And the argument that makes sense is I'm not ranking Alabama high because Kalen DeBoer didn't have a good season last season as a head coach. The team didn't do that well. So I'm not ranking Alabama high just to drop them. Florida State came into this season unranked, punished from last year.
Mm-hmm.
Punished. Right. They don't have DJ Uiagalelei anymore. They have a guy in Tommy Castellanos who was at UCF and then was at BC. So here's my thing. Look at the flip side of this.
Right.
Florida State last year comes in number 10, loses to Georgia Tech overseas, and they fall off the face of the earth. They have a bad season. They come into this season with a different quarterback, and they're nowhere near the top 25, and now they're in the top 10.
Right.
Because they proved themselves.
Yeah.
So if Florida State is not in the top 25, not in the top 10, not in the top 25, if they're not in the top 25 and they have to prove themselves, then why can't you do that to Penn State? Why can't you do that to Ohio State? Why can't you do that to Texas? Why can't you do that to Alabama? Like, why, you know what I mean? It's like I'm not making this argument of Penn State versus Memphis. I'm making the argument of Penn State versus Florida State.
Right.
You're putting Penn State in the top 4 because of last year, and you're putting Florida State at like 60 because of last year. And they're like, well, we got to base it off of something. Okay, but last year you had Florida State high, and what happened? And then you had Penn State high. And here's the thing about Penn State. Their schedule in the non-conference is scheduled for them to win. Mm-hmm. And then within conference, if they play Ohio State and maybe in Oregon, those are their only challenges, or maybe in Michigan. So they're not getting challenged. So if they're in the top 4, their chances of staying up there are high because they're not going to lose 9 of those games, 10 of those games. You know what I mean? Like if Clemson was set up that way, playing a bunch of unranked teams, and they played like East Tennessee State and Kennesaw State, and they played, you know, Abilene Christian, then Clemson would always be in the top 4 too.
Right. And now, I just want to look at this real quick.
But Clemson got punished for playing LSU.
Now, Georgia Tech comes in the rankings now. I'm pretty sure they wasn't ranked coming into the season either.
They literally, like when South Carolina dropped out, Georgia Tech, this is all they're doing now. Mm-hmm. South Florida got a spot. They lost. Georgia Tech took the spot. Mm-hmm. South Carolina. So it's just, they're literally taking teams from non-ranked, putting them into a spot. How are you dropping teams from 11 or 13 out?
Right.
When they fought to get in? None of these other teams, the teams that are in, a lot of those teams didn't do anything to earn the right to be in, let alone stay in.
Right.
And then you're punishing a team that gets in the moment that they lose.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing then. If Penn State has a bunch of unranked opponents and they lose to Oregon by 1 or by 20, because people's like, well, it's how much? No. If they lose to Oregon and the only wins that they have are against unranked, then you need to drop them from 2 to 24.
Yeah.
Because that's what you would do to Clemson.
Exactly.
Like, you know what I mean? We're making an argument Penn State Clemson. I'm not even making an argument Penn State Troy.
Mm-hmm.
But why is Troy not a good team? They hung with Clemson. Why is Memphis not a good team? They blew out Troy, who took it to Clemson. Like, why are we not looking at actual game play? We're looking at this mentality of, on paper, who do you think would beat the other team? As opposed to who's actually winning.
Right.
Because I expect Penn State to be 3-0 right now. I expect Penn State to win most of their... When you're playing unranked Northwestern, unranked Maryland, unranked Rutgers, unranked Wisconsin, unranked Minnesota, unranked Michigan State, unranked Nebraska, you should win those games.
Right. And then once you get to the back end of your schedule, you'll hit Ohio State, maybe... You know, whoever that's ranked at the time, like you say, Oregon or somebody like that. But, you know, it's just, you know, whole rankings, it's a good way to keep a good discussion like we're having here.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people will debate, who's this and who's that. But all it is just, you know, lazy analysis sometimes in the beginning of the season where people are not really, like you say, doing the research.
It's the same teams every year.
And just throwing in a name factory program and saying, yeah, this is what it is, and not giving it much thought. You know, like you say, players that been through the battles and stuff should weigh a little bit heavier than some players that are like, okay, this is their first go around, you know.
Like Joey Aguilar, I'd put him right now up in the Heisman. I'd put Lenoris up in the Heisman. You know, you want to put Nussmeier up there too, but it's like one of those 3 are respected right now.
Right.
So it's just, I mean, and it's also battle tested. When they say, well, Dan, at the end of the year, you say Penn State doesn't play anybody, but they're in the college football playoff. Well, guess what? If you don't play, like if this is the level of your competition, then I expect you to have more gas in the tank when you get to the college football playoff.
Right.
If you're playing this level of competition, like look at Alabama. Alabama's got to run a gamut in the SEC.
Oh, it's a dogfight.
And here they are playing this level of competition, and they're going, yeah, well, look at Penn State and look at how far they went. But it's just like when I look at the old Big East in basketball. If you made it through the Big East tournament, except for UConn one year, you don't win the NCAA tournament because you're gassed, you're tired, you've been beat the hell up. If Penn State's playing the schedule they play every year, they're not beat up like other teams.
Right.
So Penn State is not battle-tested like Tennessee. They're not battle-tested like Florida. They're not battle-tested like South Carolina. They're not battle-tested like Auburn, like Oklahoma, like Texas. I mean, they're not battle-tested in these, like LSU. I mean, the SEC beats the hell out of each other, and then Penn State and Ohio State get promoted that when they face each other, it's a top 4 win. But what did you do on the way up there? Like, how can you argue that 11-0 Indiana is a college football playoff team? And how do you put a graphic up on television to essentially say that it's rigged when you said before the game's even played, there's a better than 90% chance that Indiana's going to make it to the college football playoff, regardless of whether or not they beat Ohio State. And it wasn't even like, if they beat Ohio State, they're in. If they lose to Ohio State, but it's got to be a small margin. It was like they could lose to Ohio State by 100, by 4, by 70, by 20. We're still going to let them in.
Right.
And so Army looks at that and says, where's our path?
Right.
You know, I mean, Tulane, where's our path last year? Memphis, where's our path? You know, Coastal Carolina in a good year. Appalachian State in a good year. So these teams are looking at you saying, what do I have to do to earn the right to be there? And, I mean, for goodness sakes, the Big 12 gets dogged all the time. BYU doesn't have a definite path. Baylor doesn't have a definite... The only team that you see out of there is Arizona State. And Arizona State had an instant classic comeback game in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl in the quarterfinal round, and they gave Texas everything they could. And then what did Texas do? They went on to the Final Four.
Right.
So, like, how do you tell me that the Big Ten is playing all these unranked teams in and out of conference and they're battle tested when the Big 12 has one representative and Arizona State had a hell of a game?
Yeah, they did. And then nobody even expected that to happen.
No.
And
Clemson played Texas tough, and people just blow past that game too. They're like, they said everybody in the first round got blown out, and I'm like, were y'all watching like 3/4 of that game?
Right. So yeah, but I would love to see more teams get their opportunity. That's kind of like you even mentioned with basketball. It's not saying it's going to be a Cinderella case, but give people opportunity. That's what I was hoping the whole expansion thing was. It was like giving more conference an opportunity, not just another way to pack an extra 1 or 2 teams from a power conference. Okay, you fought the battles in your conference. If you wasn't big enough to win your conference or come in, okay, top 2 in the SEC Big Ten. Okay, I got it. It's a tough conference, and you're going to come out with some scars. But like you say, for the team that really, they got the luck of the schedule, where the schedule was laid out, and they didn't have to play into the top teams, on the top tier teams within that conference. And like you say, you just made, I ain't going to say an easy run, but they just got the schedule just played out the way it played out for those teams. Nah, you shouldn't get the benefit of the doubt with that. Give somebody else another chance to be able to get into the playoffs, and you never know. Things can happen in the playoffs,
Yeah.
But when you just reward the top power conferences the opportunity, like, hey, we're going to beat up on, what we're trying to do, SEC 3 schools or something like that, or was it 4?
The SEC had 3, and the Big Ten had 4.
Right.
So if you take out their conference champion, the SEC and the Big Ten accounted for 5 of the 7 national at-large bids of 9 conferences, plus the 2 that are still in the pack. So how do you expand a playoff and then give 5 out of 7 at-large spots to 2 conferences?
Right, exactly.
Because you're only trying to please the SEC and the Big Ten, because if they at any point in time stop doing what those conferences want, those conferences are going to break away. And I've been saying that for like 4 years now.
Right. Yep.
The only reason why the SEC and the Big Ten haven't broken away is because it's kind of, I think, like if I feel like they're sitting in a room laughing with each other going like, yo, we can literally ask for anything. Like we can sit here and ask for any, like it's a hostage negotiation, and they fully understand that they can ask for a helicopter made out of cotton candy, and they're going to get it.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's TV revenue and all these other things that they probably bring to it,
and they're the conferences that have the biggest television contracts. So, like, what do they always say? Follow the money. So the two highest valued conferences are the SEC and the Big Ten. Right. And the conferences that are getting the most at-large bids are the SEC and the Big Ten. So TV has already shelled out all this money, billions of dollars, and so they want these teams to continue on that they've already given the money to. Right. So, I mean, just look at it. I mean, it's simple math. You got the two most expensive conferences that have the highest revenue shares amongst their members, and those are the ones you take care of in the at-large. Yeah. Because you know that they're a part of these massive TV deals. And how can you not say collusion when the networks that are paying this big money are the ones that are playing the college football playoff games on TV?
Yeah. I mean, it's clear that today, like you say, you can see it. They get the unfair advantage, just because the conference they come out of. But I just like to see a more fair playing field. You give other teams opportunity, reward those guys that had a good season. Yeah. And, give them an opportunity. Like I say, they earn the right to get beat. Yeah. Or, they could produce an upset. You never know. You get better as the season goes along. But, but yeah, it's just a little unfair to imbalance with the way teams get voted in.
Or just have a, play-in. Where you have Army play Indiana for the last spot, and then you see Indiana lose, and then people are like, hell.
Right.
And then they're like, well, it doesn't matter because they're still going to lose to Notre Dame. And it's like, well, play the game.
Right.
Like, you think about Navy last year. They're like, well, Navy lost to Notre Dame. Navy turned the ball over 5 times. Navy beat themselves. It's like how do you win that game? How do you stay competitive in a game like that? Like, if I'm playing anybody and I turn the ball over 5 times, if I turn the ball over 3 or more times, 9 times out of 10, you lose.
Yeah, right.
Like, if you turn the ball over 4 times and you win, you're in like a 0.0000001 percentile.
Right.
It's unheard of that you lose the turnover margin by such a giant gap and you end up winning the game. So, but people are like, well, look at Dan. If Army and Navy are so good, then how come they always lose to Notre Dame? I'd flip it on you and say, how come if Notre Dame's so good, do they always schedule teams that they beat?
And that's the excuse. That's the built-in excuse. It's like, okay, yeah, we'll play 5 ACC schools, but we want to keep our traditional schedule that we're accustomed to.
So. Oh yeah, we'll play, but they're not gonna play Miami every year.
No.
They're not gonna play Clemson every year. They're not gonna play Florida State every year. If Syracuse beats them, they'll cancel that next game. So Notre Dame can make their own schedule, right? They make them deals. So, and again, I respect Notre Dame. I respect Marcus Freeman. I respect James Franklin and Penn State. I respect Ryan Day and Ohio State. I've never said they're not good teams. I've just challenged who's voting.
Right. The evaluation part of it,
right. know. They're not evaluating themselves. They're being evaluated by the nation.
Right.
And when rankings are as good as toilet paper, what are we doing? And not even good toilet paper. Like that sandpaper toilet paper you get at the dollar store. It make your butt itch.
Stay out of the dollar store.
I ain't never buy it. I don't buy it. I went in there to buy some toilet paper. They said the Big Ten got all of it. I said, I'm not trying to fight with you.
There you go.
So let's get into, but that's the thing that it irks me that no matter how many times I say it, Tarzan and Jane, and break it down, and me, and I say, me like Big Ten. Me appreciate Big Ten. Me see Big Ten all the way to end. Me interview them. Me talk with them. Me interview Ryan Day. Me interview Will Howard. Me sit with team. Me think team good. Yeah. Me just say rank too high. Me just say play better teams. Me just say beat them. And when they do, me say, okay, then good for you. Like I said, the only team in the Big Ten that has any bragging rights is Ohio State. Everybody else, shut up.
Right. You
like the Ohio State is playing better teams in non-conference. They started off with Texas. That was their Final Four, their semifinal matchup in the college football playoff en route to winning a national championship in the first ever 12-team playoff. Like, Ohio State is scheduling tough games. They're beating teams. They're whipping on teams. You think a team is good, and they're not just beating them; they're blowing that team out. Like, when you spank Indiana like that, it's like, shut up and go sit over there. Like, you played 11 unranked teams, played one ranked team all season. You got your butt whooped, so you're not getting in.
Right. Give me that ranking. You just lost it.
Right. So it's like Ohio State is the only team in the Big Ten that can just be like, yo, we're doing it. Like, I respect Penn State. I respect their fan base. I respect their environment. I respect the culture. I think James Franklin is awesome. I think he's a fantastic recruiter. I think Penn State is a really good team with really good players, top-tier athletes, awesome recruiting. I just want them to play a tougher schedule.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we're not saying that.
I'm not saying they can't make it.
They're not teams that are talented in the Big Ten, but again, challenge yourself and play somebody.
Like, if Clemson knew they could play the bottom of the ACC and then just play a bunch of randos out there, then they would do it every year.
And get the credit. You know, when they don't even do that, they're like, oh, the ACC is kind of soft this year.
Yeah.
So, you know, they get penalized even if they do survive a low challenge season. You know, like, no, they're not playing anybody.
Yeah.
And God forbid they lose a game. Oh, geez, they will be out of the playoffs then. So,
yeah, Clemson. I mean, if Clemson knew that they could play Tracy Morgan and all the gentlemen that are in the longest yard, all of Tracy's crew, like, if you could play Tracy and the cheerleaders from the longest yard, then Clemson would do it every year.
Right.
But they can't get them on the schedule because Penn State's got them already.
Damn Penn State.
Let me hold your pocket. So let's jump into Syracuse, Clemson. And so, perfect segue. You got two unranked teams. Yeah, one team that was ranked and then fell off the face of the earth 2 years in a row. And the fall from grace that would never happen if they were in the Big Ten or the SEC. Here is Clemson, and Syracuse is unranked. Syracuse is 2-1. Syracuse lost to the only ranked team they played, and started off against Tennessee on neutral ground, down 17-0, but came back in the last three quarters and 28-26 came within two. And after watching how Tennessee played Georgia, that Syracuse last three quarters looks really good.
Right.
And so you look at what they did there, and then they beat UConn and they beat Colgate. And I don't want to hear anything about them being an FCS opponent because Penn State did the same thing to Villanova. So then you look at, and by the way, when Syracuse beat Villanova years ago, everybody was like, that win shouldn't even count. So, ditto. And then you look at Clemson, and Clemson beat Troy barely. They had to come back. Clemson played a tough game against LSU at home. And Death Valley versus Death Valley, the LSU Death Valley won over Clemson on the road. So that's week one. They lose that game, two ranked teams. And then you see, and by the way, how does LSU move up when they beat Clemson, who gets no respect? How do you move up when you beat a team that moves down?
Yeah.
And then Troy, obviously, like I said, that was a tough game. And then Georgia Tech, going on the road to Georgia Tech. I told people, y'all heard my prediction. I got it right here, ready to, turn it right on and let it play. I picked Georgia Tech. I said, Georgia Tech is a tough team. I think they're tougher than people give them credit for. I like Brent Key. I like Haynes King. I like Jamal Haynes. I like what this team is doing. And Haynes King just got ACC Quarterback of the Week. So shout out to him for that. I agree. Like that is a vote that I agree with 100% for this past week. And I said it would be a close game. Georgia Tech would win. And it would be probably in the 20s.
Right.
24-21.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like you said, they're a tough-nosed team, man.
Right. Why isn't that a quality loss? Like, Clemson's 1-2, Notre Dame's 0-2, and mark my words, when they beat Purdue and they're 1-2, everyone's going to say that their season's been revived, where Clemson's dead with the same record.
Right, exactly. And nowhere near the rankings, so, yeah, exactly.
Right. But Clemson plays Georgia Tech, who's tough, LSU, who's tough, And Troy, that was a bad game.
Right.
So, Syracuse is coming in looking better.
Right.
However, Syracuse's offensive line up against Clemson's defensive line, and as I always echo George O'Leary, former Syracuse assistant coach, and I met him when he was the head coach at UCF, you build your team through the trenches and you build from the inside out. If you don't build your team from the inside out, then you shouldn't be coaching football. You should do something else. Well, you got Syracuse's offensive line that I trust as much as I would trust an ex-girlfriend. And then you have Clemson's defensive line that I would trust to jump out of a burning plane with a parachute and me like under that, like them holding on to me.
Right.
So I think Syracuse has the offensive skill guys to make this game competitive if they're healthy and they play.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see Syracuse's offensive line beating Clemson's defensive line.
Well, I mean, basically it's a style of the game. I mean, what we've seen the first 3 weeks of Syracuse is a Syracuse team that right now up until this point lean heavily on the passing game. Yeah. And that's Jeff Nixon's offense right now. I mean, they're going to try to take what the defenses give them. I mean, if they're stacking the box to stop the running game with Willis, then they may be leaving some opportunities for the quarterback. But the catch is, like you said, we kind of seen it in the Tennessee game. Tennessee was able to come with some delayed blitzes and get to the quarterback. So do you think Clemson defense have to blitz to get to Syracuse? Maybe not, because with their defensive line, we know what kind of skill they have on the defensive line. So that's why I know you say it's probably going to be a challenge with our offensive line. Just one, to me personally, it's the style of play that we're playing with right now. And then can we just keep the defensive line off of the quarterback? Because if the quarterback goes down, or gets injured, that it's not going to be a good day for Syracuse. So you mentioned that to Fran too. You say, hey, what do you got to do with the offensive line to play better? Again, they're going to get tested in this game tomorrow, because Clemson's going to probably play some kind of zone blitzing type stuff, because or they might go straight man, with our wide receivers and stuff. But it's just going to be, will the offensive line give Steve Angeli time to get the ball out, find, maybe, like I say, maybe don't even have to blitz. You might not even have to look for a hot route. Maybe they're just going to play it straight up, and then, hey, we believe our cornerbacks can hold your receivers down long enough for our defensive ends to penetrate and get to the quarterback. So, hopefully, the offense have looked at the kind of the Tennessee game. Hey, UConn brought the pressure. Let's not just forget, UConn came with the blitzes and stuff. So maybe hopefully those 2 weeks kind of, as we just saying, they tested the offense, and maybe it give them opportunity to say, hey, this is how we need to call our calls and reads, and hey, let's just keep the guys upright and give the opportunity, and then run the ball a little bit more too. So that's going to be a key.
Yeah, I mean, Steve Angeli being successful with the check down, and like I said, reminded me of Ryan Ness of Prince Tyson Gully. Like, Will Nixon did some good things between the tackles, albeit against Colgate. Good with the check down. Yasin Willis told me he wants to get back to being the downhill runner that he grew up as. So if he's healthy and well to go, that's something to look at. My concern is, if Syracuse's offensive line is not out-muscling UConn, then I definitely think that Clemson's a step above, and I don't think right. Like, I mean, Clemson every year they got somebody that at some point is going to be all ACC or whatever, and then they're going to be a draft pick. I mean, there was a few years ago where there was 4 D linemen on Clemson and all got drafted. Mm-hmm. So I mean, you look at that and you say, like, some teams only have 3 sets of hands in the dirt. And so you got like 3 guys on your front line, and Clemson's got 4 that are going in the NFL draft. Like, that's an entire defensive line in a 4-3, and a 3-4 is 3+1. And so, I mean, I don't see Dabo Swinney's recruiting going down. I don't see the level of competitiveness going down with this Clemson team. And listen, year in and year out, they don't rebuild, they reload.
Mm-hmm.
And I said going into the season, like hell hath no fury, like a Clemson scorned type of motif. So disrespected coming in, more disrespected in this first 3 weeks.
Right.
Dabo's talking about keeping his job. So to me, it's like Syracuse is running into the buzzsaw of like,
Right.
basically
Yeah.
Clemson want to give you a little one of those,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes me think of this season when the Detroit Lions went to Green Bay and they lost to Green Bay 27-13 on the road, and then they play Chicago the next week and they're like, oh, we're going to take this out on you. And they put 52 up on the Chicago Bears. And that's what this game makes me think of. It makes me think of Clemson saying, okay, you think you know who we are? And it could be anybody coming in. But I think the reality of it all is Dabo and Clemson and that entire environment, all those fans, they hear it. He hears it. The team knows it. And I think the time that Syracuse is going in here is Clemson being like Detroit and Lions and Tigers, oh my.
Yeah.
Because look at what the Lions did to the Bears, oh my. And now the Tigers got the Orange coming in. And I think this is one of those. I already thought that Dabo was going to make a statement. And I said, with Mike Norvell, I said, I don't want to be on the other side of him this year. But I think Dabo, where this team is at 1-2, hearing all this garbage, nonsense, and idiocy, ignorance, and just irrelevance of these arguments that people have against Dabo, I feel like this is a game where he's going to stand on that sideline stern the whole time, and he is going to give you a Detroit Lions, Chicago Bear type of day and say, okay, you think we suck? Well, we're about to put the 50 burger up on this team.
Right. A team coming off a loss at the last second against Georgia Tech, they're going to be more focused this week and come into this game like, hey, we ready, like you said, ready to prove something, and just know
it's got nothing to do with Syracuse.
Right, and I was going to say, though, on the other side of it, and in the last few years, Syracuse has always given Clemson a fairly three-quarter battle, and then they always found a way to fight it out. So they probably say in their mind, well, we can't even let that even happen this time. We got to go
Lawrence's first pick six in college in Death Valley against Syracuse.
Exactly. So they got to come out and try to prove. But now I would say this on the reverse for Syracuse, though. Syracuse got to take it as what Vanderbilt did to South Carolina was, Vanderbilt and Clark Lee, they were like more ball control. They let their offense kind of be the defense to keep South Carolina off the field, long drives. But will Syracuse be able to do that against a Clemson defense to do long drives? That was even like a playbook out of Dino when we beat Clemson here in the Dome. We in the beginning, we kind of blitzed them a little bit, got some quick, deep passes, and got a lead on them. And then late in the second half, it was time to ball control now. We're up ahead. We're on the lead. We don't have to keep constantly putting our defense out against their offense. Now we can try to wear them down and make them tired on their defense, and maybe make their offense take some risks that they're not accustomed to. So that's kind of, to me, going to have to be the recipe is for, hey, if you could take a quick wild punch on Clemson and get on top, and then maybe win the turnover battle, then from that point on, you can probably play some ball control, keep away, and maybe give them, but like you say, their defense is so good. Yeah. We've gone into games where we got shut out in the second half. So, you got to be strategic about whether you're going to go up-tempo and try to keep up-tempo for a bit, and then if you got a lead, then you know when to pull it back and try to wear them down. So it's going to be interesting to see how they play. I want to see what's the game plan coming in this game with how we're going to attack their offense. And then for our defense, we're going to have to get a little bit more pressure because so far, we talked about guys getting close, which is fine, but you got to finally get home and either sack the quarterback, cause a fumble or something like that. But, if you just let Klubnik stick back there in the pocket, he can pick you apart.
I mean, I'm just waiting for David Reese to leave you in pieces. I'm waiting for Reese's pieces to happen. And, when he finally hits somebody, he ain't going to hit you, in that moment. Mm-hmm. He's going to hit you, for the last 3 weeks I've been trying to hit somebody. So I'm going to hit you with, weeks of that power behind it. And so, I mean, I look to that. But, I mean, the thing is about Syracuse, like you said, get out and punch them early. Outside of Colgate, Syracuse has struggled to start quick.
Right.
They went down 17-0, and like I said, against Tennessee in the first quarter, and then 28-26, they're a better team later on. Against UConn, they go down 14-6 at halftime, 21-6 to end the game in the second half and overtime. So they've proven that they're a second-half team. They take a while to get started. They have a good game against Colgate, but what does that look like against Clemson? So can Syracuse do what they haven't done a lot this year, which is get started offensively early?
Right.
Can they prevent 3-and-outs? Can they stay on the field? Do they trust their running game in a pass-happy offense, with or without Yassin Willis? And can their defense stop anybody?
Right.
Because the defense, with all due respect, against UConn was doing what Syracuse's defenses did under Doug Marrone and Dino Babers. They gave the offense every opportunity in the world, and the offense was doing nothing with it. So the defense has had good moments, but the offense doesn't capitalize. When you play Clemson, especially in Death Valley, you can't just take away possessions. You have to score. You have to capitalize on turnovers. You have to capitalize on your normal possessions. You have to come away with no less than a field goal. You have to harass on defense. You have to force 3-and-outs. You can't have many 3-and-outs. Syracuse has to dwindle the clock down, and the only way that you can break a clock down successfully, systematically, is to run the ball, which is something that they don't really do.
Right. And that's what I was saying.
They have to play a different plan against Clemson.
Yeah, they do, but they don't have to get too far away from themselves but that's the fear, where they're playing now. You giving Clemson defense an opportunity to pin their ears back and come just full game busters out there.
But they have to get going early.
Yeah, you do. You definitely got to score.
You can't be in Clemson down 14-0.
No, that's not a good recipe.
Like what did LSU did? LSU came in there and was like, all right, we're going to play some ball.
Right. And
what did Troy do?
Yeah.
Troy was like, you're going to have to come back against us.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I'm saying. You got to put them in an uncomfortable position where they're fighting an uphill battle. And yeah, you might be fighting to hold on, but I'd rather be in front fighting to hold on than trying, like you say, dig yourself a hole.
And now then hope that you did what you did against Tennessee in three
right.
quarters and against UConn.
Right. And we know this Clemson squad is not those teams.
No.
So
if you barely beat UConn by coming back in overtime, that's a 2-3 score loss to Clemson.
Right.
And what does Vegas have? A 3-score.
Right.
And you want to cover that spread.
Right.
What is it, like 17 or 18.5?
Mm-hmm. Well, now, look, it's a challenge, but, I'm not saying it can't be done, but they just going to, those things we just talked about.
They have to play their best.
They're going to have to play a very detailed game, and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's going to be tough. It's Clemson's going to be a good test for these guys for the rest of the way as they enter into conference play. So you're starting out with one of the best, If you can fare well with Clemson, I'm not saying you're going to go in there into Death Valley. Not too many teams go into Clemson and come out with a victory. But if you go in there and you show a good showing, there's no, like I said, there's no moral victories. But, you go in there and you do the best you can. Maybe you can come out hopefully respectable, healthy. And, now you can build upon, you say, hey, if we can hang with Clemson and we can do this, then the rest of the schedule shouldn't be a problem.
I want to, as we show you where you can watch and listen worldwide, to Wake Up Call up and down the East Coast, the Midwest, the West Coast, and all around the globe, to let you see where you can do that every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I want to share this about... when we look at, I want to share Dabo Swinney and some of the things that he had to say. But before we did that, you talked about a team being more detailed. And we know that Fran's mantra is DART, detailed, accountable, relentless, and tough. Well, this is what Fran had to say to me before they played in the UConn game. I had the opportunity to talk with Fran going into the game on what he thought about DART 2 games in, and this is what he had to say about that.
Fran, you speak on obviously having that DART every single day, detailed, accountable, relentless, and tough. You've spoken about the block acid, making sure that the standard is where it needs to be. When we are a couple games in, looking at Colgate, what can you say about the standard and the culture of this team right now as to your expectations?
I think we're tough, they're relentless. I think they showed you that. We got to become more detailed and hold each other more accountable. Last year, I think that team had that completely. But they got to coming together with myself. We all done it together. This year, we don't have all the same people. There's a lot of people coming in and playing for the first time, right? There's a lot of first time everything, not just first time here. I brought a lot of guys in that played at other spots. Now I'm getting a chance to develop some new freshmen. We got a lot of freshmen, right? We got a lot of sophomore. There's a lot of guys that are playing that you'll see play again next year. It isn't like all these guys are playing and then they all leave. Like these guys all play again next year. So the culture is getting stronger daily. I'm demanding it. I'm demanding that in practice. But they're demanding it too, right? They're not shying away from it. At first some was, but now they're starting to step up. It's like, all right, man, men do what they say they're going to do, right? The biggest difference in man is knowing and doing. All men know what to do, they just don't do it. So our guys understand and know what to do, and now they're starting to just go and get it done, right? If you look at the latenesses from last week, day one academics to the lateness this week, it's a big difference, right? So as we keep chopping away at those things, then the football will handle itself.
So that's Fran talking about that, and I wanted to get to that when you mentioned that the team has to be more detailed, because Fran, going into the Colgate game, 2 games in after the loss to Tennessee at the Aflac kickoff down in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the home of the Atlanta Falcons in Georgia, and then defeating UConn at home before the Colgate game, when I asked him about Dart and I asked him about the culture, you realize what he said. We're tough and we're relentless. So we have the T, we have the R, but we don't have right now the detailed side and the accountable side like we had last year. So Fran, really breaking it down and saying we're relentless because they came back against Tennessee, they came back against UConn. They're tough, and you saw that in how they responded to adversity, but being detailed and being accountable, accountable that you're not letting yourself get down early, that you're doing what you need to be doing, and that you're detailed, right? You're not getting beat in areas, you're not getting outsmarted, you're not getting outrun in certain places. You are anticipating things. You have to be very detailed. Like they say that somebody who wants something more, who prepares for it, can beat raw talent by having that attention to detail.
Right.
So I just found it interesting, going off of what you said, to go back to Fran's words before Colgate, where he called this year's team relentless and tough, but not necessarily detailed and accountable as much as they were last year.
Yeah, I mean, and basically, like we were saying, you got a lot of new players out here playing. They may see something, but like you said, and you see it, you got to react to it. And like you say, you see the details of what's happening in front of you with your eyes, attack it with your eyes, and do what you're supposed to do. And that's the accountable part, meaning you're doing your part of the job. You can't sit back. If your job is to go in there and take on 2 linemen to give a block, for them to block you, to open it up for somebody else to make the tackle, then you got to do that. That's the you got to be selfless. Go in there, attack it. You just read what you see with your eyes and go get it. And I think that's what he was kind of mentioning. Guys know what to do, but maybe they're not just triggering and doing what they're supposed to do. So, but again, you get that with inexperience too sometimes, You're
talking about young guys that'll play next year.
Right.
But right now, Chris Peel and Demetrius Samuel Jr., you got quarterbacks that are going after 2 of your DBs that have never played college football.
Right. And then that'll come down to defensive scheme too. Right now, Syracuse have corners living on an island sometimes. Maybe you can disguise that a little bit. Maybe they trick a offense to say, hey, yeah, they're man, but then when you drop back into something else. But that's going to come with the territory. You can't try to constantly cover up something, a weakness or something. Maybe those guys are going to get stronger as the season goes along and whatnot.
And exposing a weakness, I mean, you're facing Dabo, Swinney.
Right. Like I was telling you, anybody does that. I was saying Brady does that. You have an injury, somebody come off the bench, a substitute, some coming onto the field on defense, they're like, all right, what number that was? Okay, next play, we going after number 24. He came in the game. He's the next guy. That's just strategy of football, If somebody's coming onto the field that's inexperienced or cold on the sideline, not even into the game, how quick can that person lock in? Okay, we want to test that person, and that's what those guys are getting right now. They're getting players that are going to get tested throughout the season, and then hopefully, hell, Samuels came with his first interception.
Yeah.
Last game. So,
Yeah.
And that builds confidence. The best thing you can do is build confidence in a player.
He's like, oh, this guy isn't going to throw the ball over here. There's no
right,
way. And then he threw the ball over there.
Right. So, long as he knew his assignment and he like, yo, he's going to challenge me. Okay, got it. I'm here. So, that's the main thing is building confidence in those guys. And as the team go through more reps and game time play, hopefully they'll gel and they start coming together. But yeah, and then different things in the games can happen. Turnovers are the great equalizer. If you can get a turnover here and there, that really boosts confidence for the defense and stuff like that. So yeah, we're gonna need all that in this game against Clemson.
Yeah, and you talk about when you look at this matchup, and we've spoken about Dabo Swinney, and that's what I was queuing up here. Want to thank ESPN for sharing it. Want to thank Clemson University and the Clemson Tigers communications department for sharing this. I want to say I can't believe that this happened going into this game, but I've been around the media too long to be surprised at stupidity.
Mm-hmm.
So I will share this with you as you take a look at the wonderful businesses that Wake Up Call is proud to work with. Here's Dabo responding to criticism with the Tigers being 1-2.
Ain't written yet. I just say that, like, what's so bad about our program? What's so bad about it? Like, what's so bad about the worst season that we've had 14 years? How many programs in college football would sign up for one, and only once, 14 years of 9 wins? How many programs would sign up for that? And the playoffs, we all talk about, we've been 7 times in 10 years. Who can say that? If we stink because we haven't played for the national championship since January of 20, well, I guess we stink. Or we haven't won it since January of 19. We haven't won the national championship. Well, then I guess we stink. But why are we held to a different standard from all these other teams out there who ain't ever won nothing? We're not perfect, and we may suck this year. We may lay a freaking egg and go 6-6, but I don't think so. And I know that's going to disappoint a lot of people, but I don't think so. All right? The reason we are, I think, the best program in college football is because we've always battled. We've always responded. We are not perfect. We've had some bad moments. We've had some bad little stretches. We've had some lows, and this is one of those. But we have a consistency, and we have a will to win and a fight and a program that is, to me, the model in all of college football. Our kids graduate. We got great people. They compete their butts off. They fight to the end. They respond. That's why we're here. It's not that we've never had adversity. We've had lots of adversity. That's why when I say this program was built from adversity and for it, that's why. I've lived it. So I got faith. Because I've seen it. And again, I got faith in the storm. And it's a little bit of a storm. It's disappointing. Again, and we could go schedule East University, West University, and South University, and everybody's all happy and peachy right now. But hey, we want to win at the highest level here. All right? And that's a part of the process. It's always been a part of the process. And you got to take the good, you got to take the bad, and right now we're in the bad with a walk-off 55-yarder and a very disappointing opportunity that we missed in the first game. But you give them credit, man. I give those teams deserved it. They earned it. They won it. And, let's respond like we always have. And let's let the story be written. So it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. The way you just
and you look at that and he just played into our point from the whole first hour of this broadcast, which was, we could go play East University and West University and South University and everybody be peachy right now, which is exactly what Penn State did.
Right.
So, it's like they could go play this just whatever schedule, and they don't play that schedule. You look at who they played. Georgia Tech, again, they're a good team. I mean, Georgia Tech, forgetting about it, folks. Like Georgia Tech with this quarterback and this running back and other guys on the team and the head coach, they went to 8 overtimes with Georgia. Like, Georgia was almost out of the college football playoff. Like, they could have gotten knocked out in that game. And what did Georgia Tech get for going to 8 overtimes? Nothing.
Right.
So, you look at Notre Dame, who's 0-2, and you're like, yeah, but they've only lost by, like, a margin of, like, 3. And you're like, yeah, but going to 8 overtimes with Georgia got Georgia Tech nothing, but it gets Notre Dame ranked at 0-2. So it's like, how can you say that if you push Georgia all that way, that like no one's ever pushed them to 8 overtimes, and you do it with Georgia Tech, who most people thought were going to get blown out, and then you're defending Notre Dame this year for being 0-2. I mean, it's stupid, but and Dabo went on to say other things, and I'll paraphrase here just to make sure that, I think I pretty much remember what he said, but just say paraphrase in case I miss a word. But he said, like, if they don't want me here, then they can send me on my way. Like, if Clemson doesn't want to have a winning program, if they don't want to keep winning, they'll let me leave. I'm 55. I'm not going to go fishing. I'm going to go somewhere else. He's like, please no, I will coach somewhere else. If I'm not going to be here, I'm going to go somewhere else. And he's going to have success. And the thing that people don't understand about Dabo Swinney, and I've been interviewing this guy for many years. I've lost track of how many. I've talked to him one-on-one. I just talked to him less than 2 months ago, standing face-to-face from here to my wall and, here in the studio. And so I've spent time around Dabo. I've talked with Dabo about things a lot bigger than football. We talked about God. We talked about faith. We talked about the things that really matter. And I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to tell you this very clearly. That man believes in God. He trusts in God. He has faith in God. And being a person who's believed in God my entire life and leaned into that relationship more than anything in 39 plus years, God takes care of those that give to him, that lean on him, that when we're tired, stressed out, angry, depressed, anxious, downtrodden, have no idea what else to do, that we lean forward into his lap, that we lean forward into his arms, that we ask him for help, that we cry on his shoulder, as opposed to doing it alone. And I'm going to tell you this right now. A man or a woman or a child that leans on God, God will always raise out. And I have never seen God not do that for Dabo. I've never seen him not do it for me. So I'm just going to say to the people that don't want to lean on Dabo and trust in Dabo, understand who he leans on. And as long as he leans on God, I'm going to tell you this. If you bet against Dabo Swinney, you're probably going to be wrong.
Right. But again, like he's saying, his program was built. They came through the struggle. I can remember Clemson. I'm from South Carolina. I followed Clemson at a young age, and I've seen them change coaching staff, and he went through the struggles his first couple of years there building that program. It wasn't.
They laughed at him.
It wasn't the beginning, hey, we doing all this. He had talent, but then they still had their games where they stumble, 1 or 2 losses, but then constantly grinding and putting it together and putting the program together, and they came through on the other side. And so,
are people asking Bill Belichick to get fired right now?
Exactly. So, there's a little bit of overreaction. But like you said, they're going to challenge themselves in the beginning, because on the back end of it, you're going to see what comes out of it, when they do go through those tough battles. And when they did, most times when they had that team, because every team's different. No team is quite always the same unless you got returning experienced starters, that come back. But for the most part, with the transfer portal these days, oh my God, you could just see teams just constantly turnover of players and all this other stuff. So,
right.
But that's the part of the process. You do that every year. And like he said, he has faith. He's seen it done before. But like you said, if you want to count them out, go ahead, count them out. I think last year you was like, you want to bet against Clemson, go ahead and bet against Clemson, see where you get you. So
yeah, and like in a bad week, barely got there, Clemson team won the ACC. Mm-hmm. Like, people are acting like they didn't win the ACC. And again, if you're promoting Boise State in the top 25, Penn State in the top 25, Notre Dame in the top 25, based on last year, then why is Clemson, who made it to the college football playoff by winning the ACC, why are they getting punished so early?
Right. It just doesn't make sense. But they're going to be focused. I can tell you hear it. The team and the players going to rally around this little silliness in the media with the questions, like you're saying. Whether the fan base should be up. Yeah, I mean, I guess they got a right to be upset, but again, it's still Clemson.
You're spoiled. What did Brian Kelly say about LSU? He said, y'all are spoiled.
Right.
Like he said to the media, you're spoiled. Like, we won the game, again, paraphrasing, we won the game, and you're asking me what we did wrong.
Right.
Like, we just won an SEC game. You know how hard it is to win an SEC game, and you're asking me what I did wrong. Like, we won by double digits, and you're asking me what I did right. It's not my fault that Florida's not ranked. Like, you know, and again, if Florida's such a crap team, and this is such a BS team, and Billy Eight Napier's going nowhere, then why the hell is College Game Day in Miami for Florida-Miami?
Right.
Why don't they wait for somebody else playing Miami? Miami's got other home games, right? Miami's got other road games, right? They got other stuff that's going on. And I mean, Miami's been wildly inconsistent too. Miami's really good for like 10 games, 9 games, and then they falter. They did it a few years ago, could have went to the ACC championship. They lost it all at the end. They didn't play well. They weren't competitive toward the end. And then you look at last year, they weren't competitive toward the end. I mean, I can't really sit here and say Miami is a college football playoff team until they show me that they are.
Right.
But what I don't understand about the AP poll and the coaches poll and the college football playoff committee's poll is, why do y'all love Miami, but y'all hate Clemson and SMU?
Mm-hmm.
Who's proven themselves more recently than Miami?
Right. And they always said, I think I saw this last week going into the games, they were saying that when Miami left the Big East to go to the ACC, the thought was that Miami was going to dominate the ACC. And they still hadn't done that in the time they've been in the conference. So, you know, but I mean, again, it's about name and the school itself. They don't. It's just lazy analysis and not really doing what you're supposed to be doing when you're ranking these teams and stuff like that. But like you say, they got to prove it to you before, you know, you give them that credit. You know, so it is what it is.
Yeah, you know, and Dabo, and you can at me, and you can write to me, and you can say your things, and you know, I can clip this out and put it out there, and people say, why you clip it out? If you clip it out, people are going to see it easier. Then they're going to attack you for defending Dabo. Here's the thing. I'm going to tell you 2 things, okay? I'm going to tell you 3 things. Number 1, I'm going to echo the point that Dabo and I both serve God. We don't serve you. The second thing that I'm going to put out is I will defend Dabo because I've read off to you a million times this week his record. He is the best coach in college football. The only person right now to challenge that is Kirby Smart. But Dabo's had more time as a head coach. So, number 1, he serves a God. I serve a God greater than all of us. Number 2, he is the best coach in college football. And number 3, if you write to me and you're hateful, I'm probably not going to read it.
Well, that's number 1.
Because I serve the God that's not you. So, you know, I mean, like, I mean, and I told Dabo flat out a lot of things off the air that I'll keep between him and I, but him and I had a conversation, and then we had another conversation. And, you know, we have spoken about things that he values more than football, that I value more than football. And when you're around a person and you can feel the vibrations of that person, I don't think Dabo Swinney is ever going to lose for long. And I would challenge people that the hate that you put in his direction has turned into almost 2 decades of prowess. So why would you even be that irrational or illogical to put any more toward him? The worst season he ever had was his second season as a head coach. They went 6-7. The 7th loss that put him in a losing record was in a bowl game. He's made it to the postseason every year that he's been a head coach. Even some of the best head coaches can't say that. He's made it to the college football playoff numerous times in this first decade. They've played in almost half of the first decade of college football playoff national championships. Of the 4 that they were in, they won 2 of them. So they won 50% of the time that they went there. I mean, there are teams that will never play in a college football playoff first round, quarterfinal, semifinal, let alone the championship. There's teams that will never be in the championship game. And here he is, a national champion, played in multiple championships, and the closest coach to him that you can argue is right there with him or a little bit below him, or some people might say is a little bit above him, is Kirby Smart going to the College Football Playoff National Championship 3 times in 6 years and winning 2. So, I mean, you look at 4 times in 5 years winning 2, 3 times in 6 years winning 2. Now, he won his back-to-back. But, I mean, besides Kirby Smart and Dabo Swinney of active coaches, who the hell is even close to this? No, I mean, like, Alabama's not without Nick Saban.
Right.
You look at Ohio State with Ryan Day, and they just won the most recent one. And they won the first ever one back in, like, 2014. And so you look at that scenario. Michigan won it with a coach that's been under investigation and now can't come back and coach college football unless he wants to serve penalties. You have, it's not Florida, it's not South Carolina, it's not Miami. Miami hasn't ever made a college football playoff.
Right.
So, you know, to have all of these conversations and then to look at the one half of this matchup between Syracuse and Clemson and to even be discussed, if Dabo Swinney's on the chopping block, every coach in America should be fired this year.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like you said it earlier, there's just fan bases get spoiled. Even Nick Saban got some of the heat, and if Alabama lost one game, God forbid, lose.
Oh, I talked to a fan. Yeah. She said if we don't win a national championship, we had a bad year.
Yeah.
Must be nice.
That's
what
nice.
I told her. I said, must be nice. I said, I'd love to sniff the playoff. The closest that
Please let me in.
The closest that Syracuse has ever been to the college football playoff is that a native covered the whole thing.
Yeah, that.
I was there. I was representing.
Or they went to the game start the season, which was a championship game.
They went
the
to the
before.
place. Yeah, right. They went where I went. I ended last season in Atlanta, started in Atlanta.
Exactly.
And so they got to come there to see what the field's like
right.
of the national championship. To me, familiar territory. To Syracuse, foreign. To Clemson. And again, before Dabo, who was Clemson?
Right.
Before Saban, who was Alabama? Before, you know, my goodness sakes, besides Ben Schwartzwalder and Paul Pasqualoni
Right.
and Coach Mack, who's Syracuse? And you look at all those years that Syracuse has played. So, I mean, the reality of it all is every one of the 130-plus programs not named Clemson would hire Dabo Swinney.
Exactly.
Every FCS program would hire Dabo Swinney. Every D2 program, every D3 program, every JUCO program would hire Dabo Swinney. There's NFL teams that would look at Dabo Swinney. So I think it's crazy. I understand being around the media long enough that they make up lies so that it'll get picked up, so that it'll be a story so people will talk about it, and then you find out it was never a possibility. So, but looking at Dabo and looking at Fran, this is a game where Fran's going to learn things from being on the other sideline. And Dabo is a good teacher. And Fran said, like, UConn with Jim Mora Jr., he's like, hey, you got the Mora family, father and son coaching. You know, my son loves football. I'd love to do that with him someday. And he respects Jim Mora Jr., what Jim's done. He talked about Kurt Fitzpatrick at Colgate. You know, I can speak to Josh Heupel because I covered him for 2 years at UCF. So, who's at Tennessee. There's a really awesome environment that people describe in Death Valley. I mean, everything is against Syracuse. They are the extreme underdog. I respect Syracuse. I think Syracuse can do some good things. But the thing I keep coming back to in my head is if Cade Klubnik runs successfully, the game is over. If Syracuse's offensive line can't push back and, pancake these D linemen, then Syracuse is going to lose this game. And so I can't see a path where logically, based on what they've shown, Syracuse wins this game. But if Angeli does get time, and they do move the ball, and they do balance their offense, and they do trust themselves, I trust his talent, the receiver's talent, the tight end's talent, and the running back's talent to move the ball down the field. But it all starts with the offensive line, and nobody gives the offensive line credit when it's working. But when it fails, they're the first people that they blame.
Yeah, exactly. The position that is very quiet, like you said, when they do their business, nobody knows or acknowledges. And again, when something breaks down, then all attention is put forth on them. But coming to this, the coach is really going to have to put together a good game plan, kind of probably get Clemson off their game. Like you say, we have talent, but it's going to probably need a little bit more strategy into this.
Yeah.
To go off the, I think coming into the season, we both said this was a road loss. It's not like we're saying anything that we're not not expecting, but it's just Death Valley. It's a tough place to play, so you're gonna have to come in with a good game plan. Hopefully Clemson is not on their game, but again, Clemson coming off a loss, the second loss of the season. Their focus is any other team out there. Just like I said, coming into this game, so that what makes it even a tougher task. You got a Clemson that's already hearing the words of people talking about their coach and what this is a disappointment already. So they're already laser focused and coming into this game. But I would say, like I said, if we think we do have some shortfalls in certain positions and stuff like that, it's going to take some coaching and some strategy, hopefully, to overcome some of those downfalls. But then again, like you said, if the players on the O-line and all that stuff can handle their own for a few quarters with Clemson, maybe it's a possibility.
Yeah, and looking at the ACC injury report, I mean, when we talk about running the ball, you got Adam Randall on one side for Clemson, 6'2", 230, and
big guy.
You have Yasin, who's 6'1", 238, 235, somewhere around there. So, but Yasin's listed as questionable. Randall will be out there. Randall's got 208 yards, 5.1 yards a carry, 3 rushing touchdowns. Yasin has 139. Didn't play in the game against Colgate. Mm-hmm. He's got 4 touchdowns in 2 games, 4.1 yards a carry. I'm hoping that whatever Yasin had was what Dino Babers would call an owie,
mm-hmm.
right? And that it wasn't anything serious, but they said, hey, you take an extra week, it's Colgate.
Right.
We're not worried about this specific game. So you could play, but let's not have you play. Let's put you as questionable because you were out last week. Mm-hmm. We can put you as questionable because that makes sense to go from out to questionable.
Right.
Let's put you as questionable, and then let's shock Clemson that you're a full go.
Right.
But Devin Grant being questionable at DB, he's supposed to be their veteran star for Syracuse. You got Travion Mack on the offensive line. So, there's names on here. Emmanuel Ross in the receiving core. So these are things that we have to look at when it comes to Syracuse. But from the quarterback world, Steve Angeli in 3 games, 1,072 yards, 64% completion percentage, 125 attempts, 80 completions, 8 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. And he's been sacked 8 times. Cade Klubnik, 52 completions, which is 28 less than Steve Angeli. He has 88 attempts, which is almost as many completions as Angeli has. Mm-hmm. And then, so Angeli's attempted so many more passes, 633 yards. His completion percentage is under 60% at 59.1. 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So to those of you critiquing Steve Angeli, Cade Klubnik is far behind Steve Angeli. He is he's 400 plus yards behind Steve Angeli through 3 games. And the completion percentage, he is more than 4% below Steve Angeli. And then you look at Angeli's 8-2 touchdown interception ratio. Klubnik, like I said, 3-3. Klubnik's been sacked 3 times. Angeli's been sacked 8 times, like I said. Mm-hmm. But, Angeli's leading the nation right now, and chomping at his heels currently, the closest person to him is Sawyer Robertson of Baylor, who has 1,070, and then Darian Mensah of Tulane, and now with Duke, 1,036. Those are the only 3 quarterbacks through the first 3 weeks of football that have at least 1,000 yards passing. So now for the second year in a row, Syracuse has featured the single season passing leader in yards in America of over 130 plus FBS Division 1A schools. Kyle McCord did it through the season, and at the end of the year was number one. Steve Angeli is currently number one, and if Steve Angeli continues on his path, we're a quarter through the season, which means that he will throw for over 4,000 yards.
Right, basically what Kyle did last year with 4,000 yards. So that's the kind of offense Jeff, is implementing. It's a pass-heavy offense. They would like to be more balanced, but then again, he's not afraid to give the ball and control to the quarterback. There's something to be said about that. If you're a quarterback or your receiver coming up, you want to be on a team that's going to throw you the ball. And by the way, we play all our home games indoors. Take advantage of what you got.
Right.
So
take advantage of the fact that you don't have the elements for half the season. So with that being said, Syracuse, Clemson prediction.
Score prediction or just straight up wins, losses?
Straight up score prediction in this game.
I'm not gonna say it's gonna be a low scoring game because it is a tough defense. I'm gonna say we've seen Syracuse put points on the board. That's one good thing we can say about this team, that they put points on opponents, or whether they put 20-something on Tennessee, which has been the toughest opponent so far, right? And then you had to fight back against UConn and get up into 20. So I'm going to say Clemson 31, Syracuse 21.
Okay, 31-21 that you have. So taking a look at Syracuse, Clemson, and by the numbers here when it comes to betting, like we talked about, the differential here that we have for this game, just to let people know. So Isaac has 31-21. Syracuse is a plus 16.5 and in this game right now. So that's where things are at in this matchup. And so that's where we have it. For me, do I think that these teams are going to be able to get out there and score? I do think Syracuse will get into the end zone. I do think that this game, if Syracuse does everything right, we'd be looking at something really special here. But, and then they have Syracuse, the over-under 55.5.
Okay.
So, 55.5, you have 31-21. So you're at 52.
Right.
And I think it's going to be under 55.5. I don't think that they're going to get up to 55 or 60 points in this game. 31-21, you have Clemson. I'm going to say Clemson. I'm going to say Clemson 32, Syracuse. 20.
20. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to have 3 touchdowns.
Right.
So I'll say 20. I'll say they get a couple field goals in here. But that's the other part of Syracuse too, is can they really trust Trip Woody, who's a true freshman right now?
Right.
It's taking time for him. So I'm going to say 32. You have 31-21, 32. I want to give them 24, but I don't think they're going to come within one score. So I'm going to give them right around what you have. Maybe 32-20, somewhere like that. So with that being said, give us your thoughts. Respond to this video. Of course, we're here with you on YouTube and Facebook.com, both /WakeUpCallDT. Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, here with Tortora and Alford, gives you our specials throughout football season. And, of course, Wake Up Call's main broadcast Monday through Friday from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, YouTube.com and Facebook.com, both /WakeUpCallDT, and on wakeupcalldt.podbean.com. Also go to the archives on Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts, Player FM, Podbean, Podchaser.com, Podvine, Spotify, TuneIn, and YouTube. Search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, or one word, Wake Up Call DT. And many thanks to our incredible team of Central and Upstate New York partners. Support Great Lakes Honda City, Carvel DeWitt, the Wildcat Sports Pub, GG Cards and Brakes, Chick-fil-A Cicero, Brian's Landing, Canine Camp Dog Daycare, Avicoli's, Mother's Cupboard, Canine Campground Dog Boarding, as well as Mon Paz, the snack capital of the world, Chick-fil-A, DeWitt, Game Point Sports Complex, Pizza Man, as well as being the exclusive multimedia marketing partner of your Bryan and Stratton College Bobcats of Syracuse, Binghamton University Bearcats, and Onondaga Community College Lasers. You can find all of them by going to youtube.com/wakeupcalldt. Click subscribe, hit the notification bell. Find our BSC Syracuse playlist for the Bobcats, our Binghamton playlist for the Bearcats, and our OCC playlist for the Lasers. They're also all with all of these partners on wakeupcalldt.com's homepage. And, of course, many thanks to Myers Creek on 33 Rippleton Road out in the country in Canastota, and in Syracuse Inner Harbor on 720 Van Rensselaer Street. On that 720 Van Rensselaer Street location in Syracuse, New York, at the Syracuse Inner Harbor by Destiny USA, just minutes from the Dome. That's where you'll see Isaac and I to give you wake-up call game day every single Syracuse football home game of the 2025 season. We have 2 under our belt. The next one will be the post-game of Syracuse and Duke. We are either pre or post, depending on kickoff time. And with the kickoff time being at noon, we'll be at the Dome with you, God willing, for Syracuse versus Duke in the sellout crowd on Saturday, September 27th. And then you can join us after the game by heading out to Myers Creek at Syracuse Inner Harbor on 720 Van Rensselaer Street in Syracuse, New York, with an approximate post-game show start of 6 p.m. For now, he is
Isaac Alford.
And I'm Dan Tortora. You're all amazing. From the Great Lakes Honda City Studios, we say, God bless, no stress, do your best. We'll talk with you soon, and we're always happy to be here with you on Tortora and Alford, a product of Wake Up Call.